Hi, everybody. This is Jen Schlueter. I'm Dean of Grad Studies here at CCAD, and this is our final CCAD Goes Live of the fall of 2020. Hi, my friends. I'm going to be calling in my wonderful guest today, Namita Gupta Wiggers, who I'm so honored to be present with this afternoon. So you're going to get to watch me talk and type at the same moment for a hot second. And then we'll be talking about disruption in art and craft and design. So I'm calling Namita on over, and while we're hanging out, I want to remind you that even though this is our last CCAD Goes Live of the semester, there are a couple of more events that are coming our way. On December 2nd, Audrey Chan will be a visiting artist, and on December 9th, we're going to be having a workshop on writing an artist statement for our MFA program. And Namita, hello, my friend, how are you?
Hello, how are you?
I am just great. Thank you so much for joining us twice in one day here in Columbus, Ohio.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Great. Well, I'm going to go ahead and introduce you, and then we're going to dash into having a little chat here. So I'm really honored to be here in virtual space with Namita Gupta Wiggers. She's an educator, a curator, and a writer based in Portland, Oregon. So it's dinner time here in Columbus, but it is beautiful mid-afternoon in Portland right now. She's the director of the MA in Critical Craft Studies at Warren Wilson College in North Carolina, which is the very first low-residency graduate program to focus on that field. She's also director and co-founder of Critical Craft Forum. And from 2004 to 2014, she served as the curator and then the chief curator and director of the Museum of Contemporary Craft in Portland, Oregon. She's the first American of South Asian heritage to curate and direct a non-ethnically focused art museum in the US. She contributes to online and in-print journals and books and serves on the editorial board for Garland and for Craft magazines, for Norwegian Crafts, on the editorial advisory boards of the Journal of Modern Craft, for which she served as a reviews editor for 4 years. Oh, that's a lot. And her current projects include serving as the inaugural writer in residence at the Center for Art Research at University of Oregon, a forthcoming craft anthology, an ongoing research project with Benjamin Lignel on gender and adornment. And she serves on the board of trustees at Haystack Mountain School of Crafts and has served on the boards of the American Craft Council and the Center of Craft. It's just an honor to be here. Hi, Namita.
Hi.
You must be tired.
A little.
Well, thanks for coming to chat with us. Earlier today, you were with our MFA students, along with Eric Skolin, chatting a little bit about disruption in graduate education, and that's sort of where we're going to go today as well. So let's just jump in, and can you talk a little bit about grad studies in art and craft in this moment? What are some of the most exciting challenges that you think we're facing?
So I think that there's a couple of different parts to this. You know, just before COVID hit, we had a couple of years where we've seen some, the loss of some of our craft-centered departments in larger institutions, and I won't name names because there's a number of them. Some of them are, they're losing their space because of the amount of time and money and effort it takes to maintain equipment and things like that, which is ironic because it's coming at exactly a moment when people are hungry for work in textiles and ceramics and metals and glass and wood, and they want to get their hands into materials. So it's not in step with things. Now, at the same time, we're also seeing some incredible interest in these programs in art-specific schools like yours, in other schools around the country as well. So it's not unusual, but there's like a little bit of a hiccup where some people are going, you know, kind of going like this a little bit. What I think is exciting too, in particular with this program, is that we're finally at a place where we can start trying to figure out other parts of what it takes to understand what's going on in craft. And if you think about the way craft is talked about in making programs, in art programs, but then also in anthropology or in material culture or occasionally in art history, if you bring it all together, there's an opportunity to really try to figure out what this whole sort of system can look like and be understood to be. And then it becomes something that's not just about studio craft, it's about studio craft and craft connected to art and other kinds of craft that don't show themselves in academia, but are certainly part of art practices. And in our program, we like to say witchcraft. And so, you know, which craft you want to study or think about, I think there's opportunities now to start thinking about that in different ways.
So it sounds like in your field in specific, the terrain has been shifting for a while. And would you say that COVID-19 has accelerated that, or not so much, or yeah?
That is such a good question. I think that right as COVID started to hit, there was a flurry of activity, and I'm very active on Facebook and social media, and there was a flurry of activity, lots of groups that were coming together, of faculty trying to figure out how to make this work. And I have to say, online, the craft-centric faculty were on it. They figured it out. And that's despite ceramics needing, you know, a lot of equipment to make it happen. But there were glass blowers who were figuring out how to make this work. There were metalsmiths, textile-based artists, so many people, and they had it ready to go a lot faster than a lot of other people out there. And it was impressive. It was impressive. And I think that that's because faculty who are used to working very closely with materials understand what the limitations are and what they can and can't do. And they were able to pivot really, really quickly. You know, and it doesn't mean that it's going to be the same kind of work that students were expecting to do, but there certainly seems to be, there did seem to be a quicker move to understand how to make assignments and make sort of key ideas still come through.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm taking us away from where I thought we were going to go, but I have been really excited to see the ways some of those like Facebook groups that are springing up around like online art and design education in the age of COVID have become these spaces for like really vulnerable, kind of brave explorations of how and why we teach, that people are asking real questions. And so many of us are in higher education with a background in our discipline, but not with a background as teachers. And we're all getting like really vulnerable and curious around how and why we have taught the way we have for so long. It's its own kind of disruption. I think it's like a kind of byproduct. Yeah.
I totally agree. I totally agree. And I see that even in our program too. And we've been working in a combination of on-site and online from the beginning. And the program's only in its third year, so it's fairly new. But even with that, you know, some people are more comfortable in this online format than other people are. And it does make you really very self-aware of how you're speaking, what you're saying, how you're connecting with people. How do you bring in the students who are quiet and aren't really speaking? How do you bring in, it's making people aware too of the personal circumstances and situations that we all live in. And I think that that increased sensitivity to what we all go through on a day-to-day basis is, I hope, is going to have a positive impact after we finally get to be face-to-face again. Hopefully it will create a new sensitivity for everybody.
Yeah, for sure. When you can see into someone's home, I can see into your home right now. You can kind of see into mine. I don't know. It's a boring brown, but like suddenly we understand ourselves as three-dimensional. It feels like it fits with what craft is thinking about, that it's thinking about the human in the art always. Yeah.
Agreed. It's about this texture of living. And I think that carries through. I mean, I worked for 10 years as a curator, and I know that a lot of people feel that when an object goes into a museum, it gets removed from that. And I think it does, but I think that there are ways that is also part of living in a different context. It's a different space for inhabiting something and thinking about things, but it's not the same as, you know, this mug in my hand right here. When I put it on a pedestal, it becomes a very different kind of experience, and I know that. But I do think, I agree. I think there is something about I don't know about you, but I'm very aware of which dish I've chosen to use in a day, or, how much I really appreciate a certain set of sheets over another set of sheets, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So in all of this context, your program is low residency. It's been low residency. How does that serve a student?
It's a good question. Our students are right now, and for the third year in a row, the average age of our students is 39. So these are students who are living, working professional lives. These are not students who are, for the most part, most of them are coming back to school by choice. This is about wanting to gain something that they didn't have. So it gives an opportunity for somebody who can't uproot their life and go live somewhere else to be able to actually work in a more mobile situation. It's not, I won't say that it's, the students have made it clear that it is low residency, but it's not low intensity. So it's a rigorous program in the sense that, the students are working incredibly hard. But it's a way for allowing students to earn a living, be in home, not have to uproot themselves, and still be able to pursue higher education. The other reason low residency works in our particular case is we can offer, and this is partly the way the program is structured and not so much about the low residency model per se, but not everybody coming to our program is interested in continuing on to get a PhD. A few are, but a lot of them are interested in learning so that they can continue doing the work they're doing, or do the work that they're doing in a better way, or work in a different way in some sort of culture work in a different capacity. So we're also offering this opportunity for learning that isn't just about funneling everyone into a specific path.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. How has that been impacted by COVID-19? You're still functioning as you were, yeah?
We are still functioning as we were, and we weren't real happy about having to go online because there are students that we have never met in person yet, as you have at your school as well. And I have to say that our faculty worked incredibly hard to make sure, and we worked really hard to take the kind of community building that we work on in person and to transliterate it, because it doesn't go immediately into Zoom, but to try to transliterate as much as we could. And I've been really amazed. I think that our students are they're so focused and so excited at being with a community that is thinking about what they're thinking about and wants to, to talk about the things that they want to talk about, that they've developed lots of different ways to create that kind of community and cohesion. So it's worked out fairly well. Unfortunately, we are going to be online again in January. We're hoping that things will change by July. It's hard to say, but at this point, I feel actually surprisingly it's going pretty smoothly. I would say that actually what has increased is we've had more face-to-face one-on-ones this way over this last semester than we did in the previous 2 years, actually. So that is a difference.
Yeah. The tutorial model like this feels like it's something we can sort of grab onto in this model. Yeah. I love it. Before my next question, I want to invite folks to use, there's like a little question mark bubble down in the comment box nearby. If you want to ask a question to Namita, you can drop it in there and we will bring it into the conversation as we go. Meanwhile, I'm just going to monopolize her time. So this is my next question for you. You sort of clearly assert that you are an educator, a curator, and a writer. Those sort of three strands are all throughout your career. How do those pieces interlace for you?
It's a great question. So there were two things when I was younger that I knew I wanted to be involved in. I wanted to write, and I think I told the students today I wanted to be a writer. And I was very sadly saying to my husband, "Oh, I wish I really wanted to be a writer." And he said, "Have you looked at your bookshelf and the things you've done? You're a writer." And I thought, oh, this is about me understanding what I thought a writer was and what a writer should be, and realizing and recognizing that I am a writer. It's a different kind of writer than I thought. So I that was something that I always wanted to do. And writing goes hand in hand for me, or it did in, when I was younger, with education and helping people learn, giving them access to knowledge, sharing information, sharing excitement about learning something. I did not know about museum work until I was in college. And what's really interesting is I grew up going to museums. I remember being 6 years old at the Cincinnati Art Museum taking a workshop. And I remember the smell of the rotunda, rotunda area. And I remember like the teenagers, and they had paint on their bell bottoms, and they were so cool. And they were teaching me how to draw a picture of my dog. And I remember this vividly. Had no idea how you got into that work. I didn't know how did you get a job? We went to museums all the time because my mom took us, but nobody around us ever worked in that environment. So you don't know what the work options are. And so, so that was a different thing. And I feel like with the curatorial work, it really is a place where, and the education work now, they all kind of overlap, and they all are really tied in. And in many ways, the work I'm doing now and the work I did as a curator connected through museum education, which was my entree into the museum world. I worked at the Children's Museum in Houston, and then I worked as the educator at Blafford Gallery at University of Houston. And education in a museum context is all about understanding what's on view and helping other people understand how they already have skills to understand and look at it for themselves. So it's not about, this, it's about this, and pulling out from somebody else. And so I think that it all comes together with that.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we don't think about very often, or we don't like to think about as people sort of shift into administration, is how creative and generative the work actually can be if you allow yourself to conceive of it like that we are making. We're making spaces, we're making platforms for our students to sort of share their work with the world. Yeah.
Totally. I completely agree.
Yeah. Well, how about this? What kinds of innovations in the field of grad education in art and craft are drawing you right now?
There's a couple of programs, and I'm afraid I'm going to call it COVID brain. I don't know if you're having this.
I'll accept it. Yes.
I even told someone the other day, it's like COVID ekphrasia. I can't remember words, and I usually am really good at that, but I can't recall them. But there is a program. I'm really intrigued at the models that are more distributed learning models. And that's a little bit of what went into the structure for our model as well. Although it is more rooted at the moment, at some point there may be some distribution that can happen, but there's a couple of programs where you go, you develop a cohort and you go to places to work with different communities and different institutions at those locations, and study in situ on site where you're trying to understand a community or a particular group, and those models are really exciting to me. I think that the more we can get people out of what they know and what they think they understand about the world, particularly in the US, we need to be traveling, we need to be going places, we need to get out of our bubble and understand what the rest of the world is experiencing, and learn how to be respectful in our engagement with the rest of the world too.
Yeah, I love it. I think that one of those things that has been underscored with the shift into COVID-19 pandemic teaching has been the ways we're understanding space is so much more flexible than we ever did before. It's making me rethink top to bottom why it is that we have sort of defaulted as a model for education, the sort of come to us model, because we can go and go take people with us all over the place now. It's a chance to experiment. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. I agree.
Yeah. Well, how about this? Can you talk a little bit about whose work has been indispensable to you as a teacher and an academic leader?
Sure. There's a couple of people. When I was an undergrad, there were two professors that were particularly influential. One was Thomas McEvely, who wrote for Art Forum and has written a number of things. And he taught a class that was unlike anything that was in any of the art department, from the art history department at Rice, when I went to Rice University. And it opened my mind to understanding a different way that cultures connect, and to thinking through how to really bring people into new ways as they develop new ways of thinking. I'm thinking particularly of his 13 Views of a Blackbird essay. And then at the same time, William Camfield, who writes a lot about Picabia and Duchamp, and you could walk into his office and say, I'm thinking about writing about blah, blah, blah. And he would know in this wall of books and file cabinets, he would pull 3 or 4 things and say, go make copies of these and bring them back to me. And then, you'll be able to get your paper started. And I really appreciated that deep dive that he was able to do, and that systems thing with McEvely. In graduate school, Arjun Appadurai was the biggest influence, and Homi Bhabha, and they were people I worked with when I was in grad school at University of Chicago, and they had a huge impact on me. I would say today, the most recent person who's had a huge impact on me has been Ocean Vuong, and his book On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous, and also his the interviews, and he's made me really think through language in different ways. But then, on a day-to-day, these are like names, and I can throw names out. But honestly, the faculty that I'm working with right now, the people that I have the privilege of working together with collaboratively, Ben Lignel, Tom Martin, Leslie Roberts, Jeff Keith, and Mara Holtzkov. And then all of the workshop faculty who come in, Lisa Jarrett, Jen De Los Reyes, Sarah Khan, Kareem Kubchandani is coming too. All of the folks that we bring in, I learned so much with every interaction. And my grandfather said that you shouldn't go to bed on a day if you haven't learned something new. And I feel like I've been very, very lucky to have an experience where the students teach me, and the faculty teach me, and what I'm doing is teaching me all the time.
Yeah. Oh God, I love it. So true. This reminds me that one of the things that you and Eric were saying to the MFA students at CCAD today had to do with how critical the notion of writing is in your practice or in the way that you teach. And I'm hearing it in some of the examples that you're offering. Now, there's not maybe a lot of painters that would say Ocean Vuong is the person that I look to yet, so that you're looking really wide for your influences. Can you say a little bit more about that? Is that, do you think, your way in the world, or do you think that is a craft way in the world?
Oh, that's a good question. Let me answer it this way.
Okay.
I don't think it's the way that craft is taught in the world. And I do think that I have a much broader kind of view of what the influences are. And I think that has to do with a lot of personal experiences and, things I've learned in along the way. But I think that when we limit ourselves to teaching in only specific ways, we disallow a lot of information and holders of knowledge and ways of learning from being recognized, and we keep them separate and we keep them outside. And I feel that if we can take a broader view but teach our students to go deep when they go into something, we have more possibilities of moving away from that center periphery model that we've inherited from the Enlightenment, and actually really understanding things on a spectrum instead.
Yeah, I love it. I think this is the most exciting sort of opportunity in graduate education for me, or part of why I'm spending my career sort of rolling around in it, is that we get to think about being a big net, sort of pulling a lot of influences together, and students get to sort of like swim through and sort it, but we get to like go wide. There's no reason why we have to go narrow at this level. Narrow in like skill set, maybe, but not in influence. It's our delight and our pleasure, you know?
Absolutely. I totally agree. I totally agree. Yeah.
Yeah. So you are anchored in the Pacific Northwest. Well, let me bracket it by saying this. You sort of made a career in the two most like magical places on this planet, the Pacific Northwest, and then that part of like North Carolina, that sort of Black Mountain College sort of location. You get to sort of fuse those two. So I'm jealous, I'll say that. But also I'm just wondering how your sort of place in like the Pacific Northwest ecosystem feeds your work, feeds your craft. Yeah, can you talk about that?
Sure. I mean, and I think it's different now that I'm much more of a mobile kind of worker in the sense. But when I was at the museum, everything I was doing was about what can I do to connect what I'm experiencing, learning, seeing, and what we're doing with our community. So, for example, there might have been exhibitions that were going around and traveling around to all the different craft institutions. But in speaking with our community, it was clear that that particular exhibition wasn't really one that was going to connect with our community. So we didn't bring it in. I am in a funny place where my feet aren't working where I hit the ground, and it's because I don't hit the ground. I mean, COVID notwithstanding. I am never in one place for very long. I'm actually on the road nowadays, almost 2 weeks out of a month. And so it's changed my relationship to the art scene, to Portland, to my connectivity here. I'm connected in a very, very different way. So in some ways, this COVID situation is not unlike the kind of tethered network that you're talking about, is sort of how I've been living for the last 3 years. So it's not as grounded and place-based as I usually like to be, and as I'm pushing our students to try to be and think about being.
Can you say more about that? Why are you pushing your students to be sort of grounded and place-based?
Well, I just gave a webinar, which you can find online. It's called Building a Craftscape. And basically it comes out of an essay I wrote for Craft Contemporary, thinking about how we have this way that we talk about craft materials as being neutral because they're natural. But the reality is that every single thing we use in craft is extracted from the earth or cultivated or taken from the surface of the earth in some way. There isn't anything that isn't impacting the earth in some capacity. And so craft can't be neutral. It can't be. And we need to understand that the impact of things like cotton and the way cotton shaped the whole, cotton was, if you look at Empire of Cotton, the book Empire of Cotton, for example, it's one way to understand the way that cotton and the need to grow cotton to feed all these other things in the system that were going on, including slavery, including factory work in England, all of this whole triangulation. This is an impact on craft. This impacted craft right from the very beginning. And it affected human beings, it affected bodies, it affected the land. So I think very much that we need to start understanding those aspects of craft. And when we think about materials and materiality, to be aware of that in a deeper sort of way. Yeah. And because I think it's really important right now for us to all recognize that unless we are an indigenous body or a Native American body on this land, we are not from here. And that means everybody. And I'm married to someone whose family came over in, the 1600s, late 1600s. And, they are as much not from here as I am not from here. And we need to remember whose land we're on.
Oh yeah, for sure. This well, it was our afternoon, it was your morning when you were chatting with our MFA students. We were thinking around the ways in which we can disrupt the educational process, or the ways that you and Eric Skolin have been sort of chasing after some of that. And one of the things that I was really struck by was your thinking about the sort of historical approaches to models of critique. That has been one of the places where we have sort of repeated and reinscribed certain habits of how like academic art making has functioned. I'm wondering, in your program, how do you approach critique?
Oh, that's a great question. Our program is not a making program, so it's a little different. So the way we approach it is through giving a lot of written feedback. So if you saw the papers, they are not like the papers that I got back in grad school. When I was in grad school, you had a couple of check marks, a few lines at the bottom, and you got a grade, and that's it. I mean, even on my thesis project, that's all I got. And even friends who finished their PhDs said that's about all they got. They didn't get a whole lot of feedback. We give a lot of feedback. So they get a lot of line edits and comments, but they also get a summary comment from everybody that says, here's where the paper's strengths are. Here's where the paper has an opportunity to develop further. Here's what I want to see you work on as you're going forward. They get a lot of conversational feedback in writing. It can be intimidating. I mean, as I said, we're working with adults. We're not working with people who don't have already got, they already have professional careers. We have someone who was a 30-year glass blower, and someone who was directing an art center in Lander, Wyoming. These are folks who have very serious professional lives already, and it's intimidating. It can be hard, but in getting all that extra feedback in writing, it's about trying to shift away from the product to the process, so that the education that they're getting is really about trying to understand how writing is iterative, and it's part of a practice. So we're trying to work on that.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think for my money, critique is at its most exciting when it's a process that's anchored in questions, and not so much in do I like the way this line looks, right? Not in a value judgment. But it feels to me more and more like what we're grappling with as teachers during COVID is forcing us to ask questions about, like, why is it when we assigned a thesis in my day or your day, we gave a couple of like checkmark notes and like that was it, that we were about that product. Why were we not investigating process? Because a lot of what we can investigate in teaching online in the time of COVID is process. It's sort of reopening that question like by force for a lot of us, or by choice for some of us, yeah?
But I think there's something else going on too. And this is something that I'm noticing in our program. Right now, pretty much every student in our program from the first, second, and now the third classes, the third cohorts, comes from a making background. And they're not coming from art history. And so they have art history, they have had some courses, but a lot of them have never written a 20-page paper or things like that. They haven't had to examine art history in the way that art history or craft history or other histories, history in general, takes on a subject matter. It's a different process. And art making tends to be about, and I'm being super reductive, so anyone who gets mad at me right now, forgive me. In a super reductive way, as an artist, you have this amazing ability that you have this freedom to learn and learn and learn and learn, and then pull it all in and then put it out in your own output, right? As a historian, you have a different responsibility. You have to pull and pull and pull and pull, make sure that you are understanding what you are pulling and that it is in fact what you think that you are getting at. You bring it in and you put it out there, but it has to connect and sit in that sphere of what's out there really, really differently. And that's a different shift.
Oh, yeah, I love it. I'm thinking right now about one of my very favorite directors, Anne Bogart, who, see, we have so much to talk about. You brought up a neo-futurist earlier today, Namita. Let's be best friends. But I'm thinking about the way that she says that she does not allow the question, what do you want, or is this what you want in her rehearsal space, that she has to help her actors and her designers sort of unlearn the habit of like looking to the sort of apex of the pyramid for right and wrong, as though the creative process has like, it's in my brain and I know what it is, that she doesn't as much want to sort of query the space as they do. And so she tries to take that away, but they have to unlearn. And I find for graduate students, for undergraduates, because we've gone through a K through 12 educational system that's leaned so hard on this is what we want for the test, sometimes we have to unlearn the what do you want before we can get to the place in critique where we can ask real questions, you know?
Agreed. And you're mentioning her takes me back to someone else who's been hugely influential, and it's my friend Samantha van der Merwe here in Portland, who runs Shaking the Tree Theater. And she's done 2 of Anne Bogart's plays, and done productions of them. And I've learned about it through her. And I just, everything in our world is about going towards that top in that pyramid. Our fundraising, we go for the top donors who are going to give the most for a little, rather than flipping it, so that you're saying, okay, well, we're actually going to really flip it and go for all of this and really get collectivity in down here, instead of going for just the high end donors. Everything about what we do is always about like going in that direction, and it's really problematic.
For sure. I mean, one of the most disruptive things actually is inviting a horizontal space into academia and trying to figure it out. Okay, I have one last question for you. What is next for you now? What's on the horizon?
I'm going to finish my syllabi that are needing to be put into group. We work in a cohort way with our faculty. So I need to get my syllabi in so that my colleagues can give me feedback and thoughts and make sure that we're all working synergistically. I'm working on a number of different writing projects and things that need to get finished. And, we're only in the 3rd year of the program. So, in the other institutional work that I've done, when I was at Blackford Gallery, I did that program for 3 years. I established UH Reach. By the 3rd year, we were serving 20,000 school kids in the Portland area. We were focused on middle school and high school students, and we were doing some really in-depth programs there. We had the teaching model. So by the 3rd year, I find that that's a place where certain kinds of things start to really fall in place. That happened at the museum also. This program, because of the way that it works, the way the parts work, I think that it's going to take maybe 2 or 3 more years before it really starts to get into the routine. I mean, I feel like I'm still building the plane and flying it at the same time. And the beauty of it is I've got some amazing co-pilots and in both faculty and students and great administrative support. So so it makes it possible to really try to push back on that. So I'm kind of where I'm going to be for a while.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you for spending some time with us at CCAD today. I really appreciate it. This has been a delight.
Thank you. And I hope that I can, I'd love to get that Anne Bogart quote from you. If you have the reference and could share it with me, that would be great.
Absolutely.
And I'd love to continue the conversation. This morning, we were talking about performance a lot. And I think that that's something that I'd love to keep in touch with you about as well.
For sure. I'm seeing it sprinkled all over what's going on with crafts. So yeah, my brain's on fire. So thank you for bringing it.
Thank you so much.
All right. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye.